Thanks so much for coming in. And guys, so the conversation has certainly turned more to sports entertainment, and I think for good reason, because all the news in the combat sport world over the last couple of weeks has certainly been around these, what would you call them, prize fights. And is this the future of combat sport?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Is this a bit more of a purist?
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Purism will take you to a certain level, and then showmanship will rise you to the mainstream audiences.
That's a really good way to look at it. I think, as it was said before, was a really constructive way of viewing things now with combat sports is it's just the way it is and you have to accept it. I'd never thought of that before myself. I was just getting angry every time I saw one of these YouTubers fight someone who's been in the sport for their whole lives. I guess I am a purist maybe, because for me, I think about people who've dedicated the hard work that these people have done. Like when you put your heart in a sport, as you guys know, and you're obsessed with the sport and you do it every day, it's all you think about every single day for years and years and years, especially the best combat athletes. For them to be fighting someone on the world stage who's put in 1% of that time, to me, I view that as a huge no. Like it's, to me, that's so negative. That's so like shortcut. It's like going from, A to B, A to Z with none of the other letters in the alphabet. You know what I'm saying?
Is it because social credibility means so much? So that's almost enough to balance off against the time, the dedication, the training, whatever you like to call it, where somebody's kind of come from the ground up. But having said that, did Jake Paul come from the ground up? Like, he started with 0 subscribers as well. That's fair. 7 or 8 years ago, nobody had heard of him and his brother, and now you can't go anywhere without seeing them, including in the boxing ring. And if they weren't at a level where it was credible, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't be on the stage with some of these people. And I think that fight with Ben Askren was really insightful.
True. Well, I must admit, I have challenged Ronda Rousey to a fight several times. I have on Twitter. She's never gotten back to me. But actually, I think now if she did take the fight, I guess, that would be a bit hypocritical for me to take the fight because I'm not an MMA athlete.
Well, this is really interesting. Do you think that if you had 1 million followers on Instagram, or if you had a huge cult following, do you think that might pique Ronda Rousey's attention?
I think so, 100%. I reckon if I had 3 million followers and a promoter saw, who's this random Australian girl who keeps challenging Ronda on Twitter to a fight? Yeah, maybe I'd have a shot. But
no, you have to build the audience. That's the thing, is if you're a promoter or if you're putting on a big event and you want a premier athlete or something that's going to bring eyeballs to your event, you have to have some interest, some storyline, some athlete that's going to be there. And it's like, well, this person, Jake Paul, or this person here they have a built-in audience that will watch them, and a core audience that absolutely hates their guts, that will also pay to see them lose if they go into a combat arena. So I think it's hard for people to, I mean, you've got your sport aspect, like with boxing or with wrestling or whatever it is, and that sport will have its own limits, and it's like, these are the rules, these are the structures, this is a world championship, this is how you get to that point by following these rules, beating these people, finding your rankings, scoring these points, whatever. That system will be in place, it won't change. But when it's a show, when it's a big event, when it's something that you want the world to be able to see, it requires that other element to it. I mean, I've said this before, but like with the UFC, when they put on a fight and it's number 7 versus number 8, rank in the world, and I don't know who they are. I don't care. I'm not going to watch it. I don't. These guys are at the peak.
Yeah, there's a handful of people that are on the planet that are better than them, but it's like,
that's right. Yeah, if there's no story, if there's no like, this guy, unless they build something behind it and they can really get their marketing team and say, well, this guy's a striker and he's fighting a grappler and there's this, or he hates him. But if you show me a video and go, oh, these guys are going to fight, and this guy cheated on his girlfriend with him, and he hates that dude, and he wants to smash him. I know. I'm going, oh, let me see it. I want to see it. That's the difference. And I think it's just a mentality thing and a psychology thing, that if you can build that audience, so like with Jake Paul, with these other guys who have never stepped foot in the boxing ring prior to recently, but they have put that effort and time into building that that storyline, that audience, and I would say the majority of people that know them dislike them. And that's part of the reason that they will pay to see them fight, hoping that they will lose.
Well, actually, that is a reason I'd love to watch it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think Tyron will smash Jake Paul. I would, but
What did you think last time, though? Where was your money when it was Ben Askren and Jake Paul?
Well, Askren is never been a striker. He's always been a wrestler. Even though he had, multiple wins in world competitions, it was always based around his wrestling and his funky wrestling style. But it was fucking disappointing to see his lack of effort going into that fight. I know he had hip surgery recently before leading into the fight, but showing up with a dad bod and getting knocked out in the first round is an embarrassment to sports in general. I think if you've gone the world level, and then that's the performance that you've put on. Not to take anything away from the punch that Jake landed, because it was. I've seen a couple of replays from a few different angles. It was a legitimate punch that landed pretty hard, but I think Ben could have done so much more to have been ready for that. I don't know if you even trained boxing to get into it. It was just like, what did you do, mate? You didn't look like you had ever been in a boxing ring prior to that night. It was bad. It was like I could have done the same performance, basically stepping into the ring.
So is Thor hurting pay-per-view numbers by putting on these demonstration fights beforehand?
I'd say so. I haven't seen his demonstration fights, but that's definitely a way to hype. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is Thor, sorry?
Hurting pay-per-view sales by his demonstration fights, because there's nothing particularly inspiring amongst that. Like when you see him technically, he doesn't move very well. As I was saying, he doesn't have any snap. He doesn't seem to be able to access his power. Would it have been better off if he hadn't publicised and televised those demonstration fights beforehand, and maybe just stayed in the gym and turned up on the night? And
I think it builds interest. I think that if people are going to see it and they're going to look at the demonstration fight, even if he doesn't look great, they're still going to watch him versus Eddie Hall. That's the story that you've got there. Regardless, I mean, he could have 50 amateur fights and look terrible in all of them. I'll still watch him fight.
He still won the pay-per-view, yeah,
because it's like that's the event is that. It's based around that. All the external stuff is just those extra little, okay, well, we've seen him do some striking, we've seen him do some fights, but this is what the actual thing is. So that's the thing I want to see. So
when we invert it and say, is there an opportunity then for legitimate boxers to challenge maybe social media stars that think they're boxers? Or
I would
MMA
do that
guys?
to a lot of social media influencers. Give them a knock and see what they're still promoting afterwards.
So is that a legitimate pathway in the future? Is that something?
Well, I think, to gain attention, so I know for me as an athlete and in my previous sports, the more kind of following you have as an athlete, obviously this is a fact, the more you can gain sponsorships. And for sports where you make no money, so my previous Olympic sport, that's actually your living, or that's the only kind of physical benefit that you, apart from being fit, but that's the only tangible benefit that you get from all the time that you put in.
Yeah.
What I was actually thinking before is maybe, WWE. I think the fights that we are seeing, to me, I think they are comparable with WWE.
Yeah.
There's a predicted outcome, or there's a set outcome. And to me, that's not a real fight. That's not real boxing. But maybe we should make a boxing league, and that is the WWE for boxing, so that we don't see these things being called a boxing match. But maybe that's what an exhibition match is. Maybe the whole time exhibition is really that fake league of boxing.
Yeah. I definitely feel that the exhibition is staged in such way as to make both athletes look perhaps better than what they actually are. And maybe without that, they wouldn't be worth watching in the first place. But it is that X factor, and maybe it is the same thing with WWE. Yes, the result's predetermined, but the audience doesn't know. And so the intrigue is still there. And what we're waiting to see is who's going to get knocked out, who's going to get hit out of the ring, what's going to happen. And maybe some of that's diminished if we didn't think it was real. Like, I was one of those heartbroken
Definitely.
kids that found out that the WWE wasn't real because for years,
Dave.
What are you talking
for
about?
years, Vince McMahon said it was real.
It is real. Whoa. The Undertaker's never been beaten.
But you know, I think we'll see more of it, and I think it'll be good for sports just generally because it keeps the conversations going around some of these traditional sports, like heavyweight boxing in Australia. Certainly isn't in a purple patch at the moment, but then Paul Gallen comes along, and yes, he got called a donkey the other day by his opponent's father. But as Paul Gallen said, I'm the donkey that's making your son relevant. And your son's the heavyweight champion of Australia, and he's not relevant unless I'm in the ring. And I think that's really powerful. And I think Paul Gallen's going to earn every cent in that fight. I think he's bringing all the attention to it, and there would be a fraction of the people either buying the pay-per-view or buying a ticket turning up if it wasn't Paul Gallen standing in the ring.
Absolutely. Well, that's the rise of the internet in the last 20 years or even the last 10 years, where people are able to now go and create their own content and become stars in their own field that they choose to look at. So, I mean, if you load up YouTube, you can look at whatever interest you have. There will be a subculture of stuff you can find, skateboarding, or if it's boxing, or if it's, arm wrestling or anything. And it's like, these are your characters in this field. And people can go on and actually generate interest and create content that is based around what their interest is. So they can build an audience in their own field, as opposed to, say, even 30 years ago, maybe 25 years ago, where it had to be on a mainstream TV channel or something to be featured for people to even know that it existed. So, if it wasn't at the Olympics or something like that, it's sort of like, well, this sport disappears for 4 years, it's not heard of again, and then it's on for 5 seconds in between swimming and track at the Olympic event. But to be able to say, okay, like for arm wrestling, for me, it's like, well, I can put videos out every single day, and we have some great matches at our club, and some awesome back and forth stuff with interesting characters, and build hype and build storylines and have rankings and stuff like that an audience can come and see it and start to know who we are and what we're about. And if I was trying to do that, say 25 years ago, it'd be like, mate, no one's ever going to put your stuff on TV. Like you're never going to be able to show this to anybody. You'd be filming it with a camera and making a video at home on a VHS, and no one would see it. But the ability to be able to put content out that is accessible by the world, it's just made such a massive impact. So for somebody like Jake Paul, like Logan Paul, who have built this culture or this following through, I don't know what they originally started with, just random, I don't know what the
YouTube
channel is, but
I don't even know. Random shit, for lack of a better word. Sorry.
Maybe pranks or maybe whatever
pranks.
they were doing. But they were able to say, okay, well, this is what we want to do. We want to make a channel. We're going to put content out. We're going to be interesting. We're going to be crazy. This is our personalities. We're going to get people watching and build an audience from it, and whatever millions of subscribers they have now. And it's like, okay, well, we have this base audience which we created. Now the thing we want to do now is to go into boxing, or we want to go here, or that's the next step that they want to take. And for somebody to take up that match and then step in the ring with them, it's sort of like, well, you can see the justification of it, where you've got an audience there that wants to see something that has been created by these people through a different outlet, as opposed to the traditional mainstream audience, where it's like, okay, maybe these people went pure boxing and they fought on local cards, and then they built their way up through the ranks for years until they were able to fight as a professional, and then get into the Las Vegas or whatever, or get the athletic commissions and that sort of thing on side. So they went that route, that traditional route, and then they're seeing somebody else sort of do it another way. I don't think that it's wrong to have done it the other way. It's just like, there's multiple ways to get to the end destination. So
That's fair.
And
That
one
is
way is
fair.
a new way, and I guess a purist like you, Izzy, might be a little bit upset that these people are queue jumping.
Not just a little bit.
Completely furious. That these people are queue jumping.
Yeah, I'm ready to fight.
Jake Paul.
Yeah,
Jake Paul, we got your next
I
fight.
challenge Jake and Logan
Right.
Paul to the
Right
ring.
now.
I will fucking, I mean that. That's a challenge. Someone send them a DM.
There you go.
After Ronda Rousey, of course.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I mean, there's we now live in a world where social clout matters, and selling tickets matters more than anything else. Selling pay-per-views matters more than anybody, and people that come from a content creation background kind of understand story better than athletes do. And if you've got a bit of clout and you're also really talented, I guess therein lies the opportunity for you to make good money in sports. Because the attention's there and people want to follow the story to the end. They want to see you knocked out or they want to see your hands raised high. Either way, they want to see what happens. And does anybody really care about a couple of mid-level proficient professional boxers on an undercard? Probably not. Would we be prepared to watch a lower level fight between two people that have got 5 million followers each, and where there's a bit of a spat going on? Yeah, I think people are inclined to. I think they'll pay money to see it, as a matter of fact. So I think we'll just keep seeing more and more of this, much to Izzy's frustration, unfortunately.
I'll just be fuming watching this happen.
Well, you are a purist, and perhaps you can share with the audience as to why that is, because you've really dedicated your life to sports. Perhaps share with us a little bit about your journey into sports and what got you started and where you've been and where you're going.
Yeah, well, where it started when I was 4 years old, I got to hold the I've forgotten the name of it.
The Olympic
cool Olympic thing.
The torch.
The torch.
Yes,
That's
that's
the
right.
one.
No, I don't actually think I knew what that was at that point in time, but everyone was having a huge fuss about this Olympic thing that was going on.
So how did that come about?
Well, my sister's best friend had a heart issue, and she was able to she did part of the walk when it came to Adelaide for the Sydney Olympics. Yeah,
Very
Raph was
cool.
her name. If you're hearing this, Raph, I love you still. Yeah, I had a photo with her. I wish I could find that photo. What actually happened for me is I loved sports as a young kid. I loved it. But I had 2 car accidents when I was pretty young. The first one, after that, I was told you can't do PE.
Oh.
So I used to sit and watch all of my friends do PE, and I wasn't able to do anything, even like the drama class we had in junior school. I couldn't do, like space jump or...
So you were told never? You went
Not
expected?
never, but just while I was recovering.
Yeah.
So I actually think now, having done 1 year of medicine and done a bit of physio and other subjects, I think I was told the wrong thing, which is a bit annoying, but it is what it is, and it made me who I am. I'm grateful for the experience, I guess. After I just recovered from that, I was just back joining PE and everything. Like, I think it was within a year, or maybe just shy of a year, I had a second car accident. Just when everything was going fine. And that one was worse. Yeah. And I was told again, you can't do PE, you can't join in.
What were your injuries?
It was my back and my neck. But the second time I had my school bag in front of me, so I did my knee. The second time we were turning right and we got slammed from the back. Yeah, that wasn't too good. But the actual injuries were like just your general disc things, which shouldn't stop you. They shouldn't stop you. And the fact that I was told you can't just, I was just told.
Yeah.
I was told by my parents, I was told by my physio, I was told by like medical, you can't do these things.
Yeah.
And that was, as a strength and conditioning coach and doing what I do now, that was terrible advice, especially because if you do have injuries like that, you should be moving. You should be swimming. You should be walking. There's always, I tell everyone who's injured, find what you can do and do it. Like, I did a pretty bad injury a few years ago. I couldn't even do swimming. The only thing I could do was chain myself to a seat and use the arm cycle. That was the one thing. I couldn't do anything, but I found what I could do and I could do it. Anyway, long story short. So for me, I actually think that they were really defining years for me, because I think the inability to participate at that age meant I wanted to do it so bad. I remember when the Sports Institute came for like the Talent ID Day, and obviously, as I said, like I missed out on pretty good developmental years being told that and not doing anything. So I didn't do, obviously it was average, probably didn't do well. I was average. I was totally average at sports at school.
Yeah.
You know, obviously.
but love sport.
But I loved it. I fucking loved it. I loved Olympic stories. I loved seeing stories about people who, you know, just kept going until they won Olympic gold medals and that sort of thing. I really loved it.
Good story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always a good story. Huh? And then I think what happened for me was I was really shockingly bad at the school cross country. And I mean shockingly bad. Like, you know, everyone used to walk it and that sort of thing. I'd probably still come last if everyone was walking. So anyway, I was sick of coming last. I was sick of being shit at sport. So I said, oh, fuck this. You know, I'm going to teach myself how to run. And I became the 4th best runner in South Australia for my age group.
Incredible.
I taught myself how to run, you know, like I didn't have...
What did you do to teach yourself how to run?
Well, let me tell you, a lot of Googling,
Yeah.
but actually this is the best workout ever. This was the main workout, I think, that just got my cardio up that well. It was 200 meters as fast as possible on the treadmill with 100 meters walking as recovery. I did that 5 times. That was 1 set. And then I did, I think, 3 sets. I think the recovery between sets was maybe 200 meters or something. It was usually until I got to a certain number that was even, you know, just because that looks nice. And I reckon just doing those sessions is probably what gave me my speed. And so I'm huge in my coaching on high intensity interval training because I think if you want to get fit fast, that's the best thing you can do aerobically. Yeah. Especially at the moment, I recently identified again my cardio is not good. I just love weights more than that. So I've been trying to convince myself to go back to that. Anyway.
It might happen. It may happen. Yeah.
So that was the main workout. So taught myself how to run, got fit, did rowing, loved rowing. Then finally, when I was about 19, I saw on Facebook the Australian Institute of Sport is looking for older athletes, older being 19, I think I was 19 at the time, who'd missed out on that because they usually draft people or put them into state sports institutions when they're like 13 to 15. So I'd missed that opportunity, right? But as we know, just when you're a sports lover, you're just always thinking about it, right? And then, I saw this opportunity on Facebook. I saw an ad come up and it was like they were looking for athletes who'd reached at least a state level, which I'd done with my running, and they would draft them into sports to try and make the Tokyo Olympics. Wow. And, so I went for that. You got to nominate 3 sports. I put down combat number 1, cycling number 2, and canoeing number 3. And then they were to look at your physicality and psychology to work out what you were most suited to. So because of my rowing experience, I think that's why, but also maybe I know my arms are longer than my body, but also that'd be beneficial for combat, maybe not cycling. I got put into canoeing. Canoe sprint, which is a sport. I assumed it was kayaking. Yeah. Because I'd never heard of the sport in my life, which is what Matt was saying. Is sometimes there are sports on at the Olympics which you see for 5 seconds between swimming and athletics, and this was one of them. Yeah, this was one of them. And so that's where it all started. That's where my professional sports career started. My high level sports started there. So I went from that, I was put straight into the sports institution, straight into the state sports institution, and training with people who'd been there since they were like 13. Then just was training, and my whole life revolved around trying to make the Tokyo Olympics pretty much for the last 4 years.
What is the canoeing? What is the competition side of it that you have to do in an event?
So there's a 200 meter sprint and a 500 meter sprint for women. I really enjoyed the C1 200. That was so much fun. Just 40 seconds is like pretty damn good. I think I was getting around 50, like 50. Wow. Yeah. And my friend actually just qualified from Croatia. I just found out getting 50 seconds flat. Wow. Yeah. So she's just qualified for Tokyo, which is pretty exciting.
All right.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So so C1 200 and C2 500 are the Olympic events for women. Yeah.
All right. And it's a straight race. You just
straight and as fast as you possibly can. Yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome. The sport. That's the sport. And I loved it. I did really love it. I love the feeling of being out on the water. I liked how odd it was. It was so different. Like you're on one knee, you know, you're paddling on one side. People are always like, do you swap sides? I'm like, no, that's
the side.
that's probably why I always that's the face, yeah. That's
confused
why
now, yeah.
that's why I got so many injuries, like even you can hear my shoulder. I'll bring it close to the mic, doesn't it?
Oh,
Ooh.
Yeah, that's my shoulder. That's from canoeing, because it's obviously one-sided, so you never even out at any point. It's not like kayaking where you just paddle on both sides. No.
I'm like confused. My mental image of a canoe must be a kayak. What's the difference here?
It ain't a kayak. See, this is the best thing about like indefinitely stepping away from canoe is I no longer have to explain what it is. And everyone knows boxing. I'm just like, boxing. Oh yeah, boxing. Oh yeah, you're a boxer. When I'd be do canoe sprint, I'm like, oh yeah, I did canoeing at camp once. I'm like, no, you didn't. So a canoe is a very skinny boat. Like it's skinnier than this mat right here. Like the widest part of my boat would have probably been about that wide. So you have your knee in a knee block, which is made of foam. It's pretty funny. I was looking at ways to like do 3D printing and make like a technological advancement in the sport because for the past
like the
50
wing
years,
keel of
because for the last 50 years, what people do is you buy a block of foam. And then you just outline your knee and you cut it. That's what everyone does. That's what the world champions do. And then you sand it. That's your knee block.
Wow.
Customized to your knee. And I was thinking, God, I'd love to like market some sort of thing, but it never happened. But there you go. Anyway, so you have
very niche.
Very for probably about like 2,000 competitors who know how to canoe. The thing about canoeing is no one does it because you fall out for the first 3 months. If you've got no paddling experience, I can't see anyone wanting to, or anyone who doesn't want to try and make it to the world stage, to be committed enough to stay and learn how to not fall out.
So what made you want to do it? I mean, this sounds like a horrible sport.
Having done it for that long, I think it's fairly accurate, actually. It's a great feeling when you're on the water, when you go fast and when you're sprinting, when you have a good start, it feels incredible, even though it's a very odd movement. As I said, like to finish off, you're basically in a lunge position and you have an A-frame and you paddle like that on one side. So you never swap and you do a thing called a J-stroke to stay straight. Right?
Can you show me a photo of it or something? It's like it's getting more elaborate.
I look up canoe sprint for you.
I've started with a canoe, like the kayak, and now it's gone to kneeling on a kayak.
Here, so this is a photo of it. This is let me show you the German. He's one of the best. That's Brendel. He's one of the best.
Okay.
Oh, right. So when you go fast, it's fun. I'll say that.
Plug it into the cord.
Yeah, we can plug it into here.
That's
okay,
cool.
we'll plug it in.
Oh, you're gonna plug it in. Oh, geez, I hope no one's sending me a message right now.
I'll send Izzy a message right now if you're watching live. You can see that, okay?
Not yet.
Okay. So what we're looking at is an image of a guy with his knee in a knee block that he made himself
out of foam.
Out of foam. He doesn't look so happy to be out in the water though. Like it wasn't quite.
He's concentrating.
Yeah. I guess he's
focused.
focusing. Yeah.
He's trying to do the 250 seconds.
He's trying to work out how to stay
He'd be
straight.
going for like 30 to 40.
Wow.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a really quirky sport. But so this is
Quirky is the word.
So the institute kind of steered you in that direction because they felt that was your best chance of.
I don't know why the fuck they did.
They just threw a dart at the dartboard and went, canoeing.
Should be right about that.
So what are the lessons that you learned from doing this that you've brought over to boxing?
I learned a lot. And at the end of the day, there are a few great things to come from it. And the best thing was that I continued. At the moment I'm doing a push-up challenge for mental health awareness. And I was reflecting on mental health in high-level sport and all that. And I realized for the 4 or 5 years I did canoeing, I'd say like 80% of that time I didn't enjoy the sport. Yeah. So why did I keep going, right?
Yeah.
So for me, like I didn't enjoy training. I didn't enjoy racing. I was not happy doing it. But I'd been given a scholarship to make the Tokyo Olympics and everything I did was I felt like I had to give back. and B, I wanted to reach my goal. And the best thing I did is, even though I look back and I can say a lot of that time, it wasn't like, oh, I can't wait to get on the water. And, it wasn't like that a lot of the time. Was I can look back and say, I know that I gave it my absolute best. I did everything I could. I overtrained. That was actually to my detriment, if that's the right word. That was what perhaps held me back, was especially in my earlier years. I was doing 3 sessions a day when I was meant to be doing 2, especially just starting out. So I got so many injuries. And then on top of that, when you're in like a negative training environment that doesn't suit you, you're also at a greater risk of injury. So that was just unfortunate, but it is what it is.
So what was the effect on your mental health then, and how do you reflect upon that retrospectively?
I can't believe that I did what I did. I really can't.
What age were you at the time?
Like 19, 20, 21, 22,
Yeah.
And I've just been reflecting on it a lot recently because I'm doing a sports psychology subject, and I thought, how the hell did no one see how I was?
Yeah.
I don't know whether I was just really good at putting on a smiley face. Everyone always says I'm positive.
Yeah.
But looking back at it, it was pretty bad, actually. By that I mean, I was burnt out by overtraining and everything. And I just don't know. I just really don't know how I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have coaches that recognised that side of things, or they were just purely there for the technique and sport, and they didn't have that sort of psychological training behind them?
No, it's funny because even I think when I had so number one, I don't think any of my coaches ever did recognise anything or ever say anything, ever. The only coach who did was my strength and conditioning coach, and he was a great support. In fact, why did I keep going? I'd say a large part of that was being at the sports institution and having the opportunity to go to the gym. That's why I'm always strong, because I love training with all these athletes from different sports, like the cyclists, the hockey players, fantastic people all going towards their goals. A lot of them, like most of the people I've trained with, have made the Olympics or at least made Tokyo, So I think there was a bit of a acknowledgement there. When I did a pretty bad injury and I was out from being on the water for about 6 months, that was the one time that I was offered sports psychologist help. I think we had one session. I can't even remember.
Wow.
But yeah, and that is what it is. But I'm grateful because I guess in terms of what can I take from that to boxing is kind of being really aware of not getting too involved in the goal, that I let my mental or physical health go. That's a big one for any athlete in any sport. Don't be so focused on your goal that you kill yourself for it. There's no point.
Yeah.
You won't be happy when you get there.
Working smarter, not harder.
Yeah, definitely. That's a big one.
It seems to be a trend in a lot of sports or a lot of things I see. I'm working in a gym at the moment, so people come in, especially New Year's resolutions.
Oh, every January, every
Absolutely.
gym I'm at, there's so many people coming in January.
And they come in. Yeah. Well, they're usually gone by February. So.
Yeah.
But the reason being, or the main reason being, is that they realise they'll put in a ton of hard work to start with, and they'll burn out or they'll get injured quickly, or they'll realise this is hard work. This is not easy, and it requires a lot of discipline and sacrifice, and all the things that go with being good at anything. And health is one of those things. So you can sort of see that trend there when people say, okay, this is your goal. And if your case, they're like, we want to get you to the Olympics. We're going to pay for you, a scholarship, and these are the benefits. We're relying on you, and you have that accountability. Like I owe them this, or I need to
the obligation.
do this. Obligation. That's right. To push yourself beyond the limits, and it's like you could almost see so many athletes doing that, where it's like to be able to have a coach or somebody that is recognizing, well, I'm going to hold you back a little bit so you can recover. It's like we're going to go hard here, and then we're going to recover. We're going to go hard here, and we're going to recover. We're not just going to go 100% hard all the time, because you will A, burn out, B, be exhausted all the time, or C, get injured, and it's what happens.
And fall out of love with the sport,
That's
maybe
right.
sport altogether.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I had a experience recently where, which I'll talk about in a future podcast. I can't wait. You guys are gonna love this. You're gonna love it. I can't talk about it yet, but when I talk about it, you're gonna be like, "Oh, damn!"
I hate it when people do that.
I'm sorry, guys. But trust me, it's a good one. But in this life experience, I came out of that life experience having had someone who is an incredible human being, an incredible person, tell me, I think you should consider going back to canoe. To hear this from them was like, maybe did I just kind of leave that sport because of like the bad environment and because of the burnout and because of all of that, when at the end of the day my results were always improving, and from someone who had no experience at all in high level sport, let alone in a canoe or kayak sport, I think I actually did really well, and I am really proud of that. And I always forget that until I look at my times and I'm like, oh wait, I was getting better. I was doing a good job. No one ever told me you're doing a good job.
Yeah, really.
Never.
But
It was my last race when a guy came up and said, hey, Izzy, that was a good race. That was like one of the first times I had someone say, well done.
is that a culture within the sport,
Yes,
do you think?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's just the way it was.
So do you think a lot of these experiences that you've had as an athlete, you're now taking on board as you're studying and trying? Are you seeking to develop strategies for people so that they don't experience the same thing? Perhaps?
100%. As a coach, I tell everyone, especially one of my friends, she's a rower turned cyclist, and I just want to give her all the advice and the things that I didn't know. I think, and that's something I'd love to share with every athlete, because one of the biggest things looking at it is I came in as an older athlete at 19 with no experience about what were the expectations for me. I didn't have an induction into SASI. I didn't have an induction into the sports institution to say, this is what we expect of you, or this is what you have to do. Here's a protocol for if you're feeling like this. Here's a protocol for injury. This is how training works. You'll be training this day. Never. Whereas knowing that stuff, I think, is something which will help any younger athlete, and also to identify things when they're not going right. I had no idea. I didn't have anyone in my life who could tell me those things, and I didn't know what questions to ask because I wasn't even aware of these things. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it's a bit of a lonely life.
Yeah, sport is.
Yeah.
Sport is. And people are constantly saying to me, oh, boxing's a very lonely sport. And I just think about canoeing and I'm like, and yet when I rock up into a boxing gym, it's like a family. Or even when I came to arm wrestling, it was like, it is a family, you guys.
Yeah,
and it's a different culture. So to me, even though it's an independent sport, I've noticed in combat sports that every gym is a family. And that's, to me, that's so much more, I don't know, what's the opposite of lonely? In company, that's so much more full of heart. I'd say that's so much more full of heart to me than my experience was in canoeing. And that's my experience, I think had I had a family member who, did canoeing, maybe it would be different.
Do you think one of the main reasons of that in terms of the difference between those sorts of sports is the physicality that you have to do with another person?
Yes.
You are relying on that other person to keep you safe, to not harm you, to support you, to teach you physically. With arm wrestling, you are literally grabbing hold of the other person's arm, and the first thing you're doing, hello, nice to meet you. Here, put your elbow here, and let's have an arm wrestle. Straight away, you're into it. Whereas you can sort of feel, who has the strength, what they're doing. You can feel the techniques, and you can teach them to get better, and they're teaching you things, and it sort of goes that way where you're all sort of working together to get better. Whereas you could say something with canoeing or with running or swimming, and it's like it's so individualized because it is just you and the race, and so with weightlifting or something, it's like, well, you either pick it up or you don't. Like it's just
the weight doesn't care.
That's right. That's right.
The weight is indifferent.
Yes. So to go out and beat the time or beat the the weight requirement or whatever the sport is, or to go and beat another person physically, I think that's one of the differences is that I've noticed anyway. Yeah, and like you said, I mean, it's a boxing gym or an arm wrestling gym, everyone knows each other. I mean, the difference between, I mean, I've been training in the gym for 20 years, and, you say hello to people and it's nice to say, feel welcomed or whatever, but because you're just lifting weights, like there's no.
It's an individual pursuit.
Yeah, exactly. And even training with someone, like they're lifting it, now I'm lifting it, now they're lifting it, now I'm lifting it.
Yeah.
Whereas with arm wrestling, it's, it's like, well, let's go, let's have, I'm feeling what you're doing this. And
It's much more intimate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And you're relying on the other person to be there. So it makes a difference.
I'd agree with that. And I was really lucky to meet Taylor Ford. Do you guys know Taylor Ford?
No.
Oh my gosh, I'm a huge fan of hers.
Okay.
I'm very grateful to call her my friend. So she is a wrestler from New Zealand who recently moved to Adelaide. And she
Roman
won
Greco or professional or
amateur freestyle. I
Okay.
think she's freestyle.
Yep.
And she won, I believe, bronze at the Commonwealth Games. And I'm not sure which Commonwealth Games. What was before Gold Coast?
Oh, cool. Commonwealth
India?
Games.
Was it in India?
I think it was Delhi. I think
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
I think perhaps, yeah. Yeah, good guess.
Let's go with that.
Well, she won that. I'm really lucky I got to do some wrestling with her. I really enjoy wrestling, actually. It's great fun. If I wasn't doing boxing, I'd love to do that, even just for general stuff.
I don't know.
Yeah, it is.
It's
Christ.
crazy.
It
It's
is.
so physical. Yeah.
It is. And as soon as I met her, just said to her, you know what, like, you were so awesome. Like, she's such a awesome down to earth person. I'm like, you know what I've noticed is, why do you think in combat sports, every combat athlete I've met has been this incredible human being, even you guys all sitting here around the table, really, I'd say down to earth, respectful, and, and strong also. And she said her explanation was that there's no ego in combat sport, aside from Jake Paul and Logan Paul. There's no ego.
Well, they're the pinnacle.
They're the pinnacle of ego. But there's no ego in combat sports because you're constantly getting, yes, you're getting punched, you're getting thrown, you're getting your arms, moved or broken. You're getting your biceps broken.
I do think that's the case in the interpersonal, and that whatever ego might be there gets played out in the ring or in the octagon or in the cage. My feeling is that when you've got people that are getting punched in the face at practice, there's this humility that comes along with that, that transcends the rest of your life. That you don't get you're not going to get that in golf or tennis.
Or tennis, and tennis is the home of a few big egos.
Yeah.
Exactly. But you don't find it on a BJJ mat.
No, exactly. Well, that's it. I mean, with arm wrestling, you're going to lose thousands and thousands of times before you start getting good at it. And it's like you can't lose that much and think you're awesome.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So, and to be beaten not only like in a race or in a weightlifting competition, but you have been physically dominated or beaten by the other person has beaten you. So
Otherwise, you're just delusional. You got your own mental health issues to deal with.
Right.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
No, for real. I think it's a really interesting topic, and I think you're right. I think you guys are right. For me, that's been my experience coming from a completely different type of sport into moving into combat sports. That was one of the first things I noticed is how come everyone is like this? There's like an aurora, and for me, 100%, it's the values. It's like respect amongst everything, and that kind of maybe comes with the humility. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you certainly learn that. I figure I'm a pretty strong guy. I've been weight training for most of my adult life. I'm about 100 kilos and probably a little bit in the wrong place. But I'm a strong guy. And I stroll into the arm wrestling training room, and you'll have guys there that are 75 kilos that look like sticks, and then all of a sudden your arm's going over and it doesn't make sense, and you don't want to play anymore, but then you want to work it out. And you want to come back.
Absolutely.
But you can't certainly walk in with an ego and expect to be the king of the table. There was recently an example of a young chap that came into the club. Perhaps you want to share that one.
I'm kind of excited.
This is our humility story.
Here we go. Here we go.
Every now and then probably any time you tell somebody about arm wrestling, and they love to bring up the fact that they've never lost an arm wrestle.
And we hope
that was me. Oh my god, it's crazy you say this. No way, I gotta cut in here. Sorry, I gotta cut in here. When I was at school, I was unbeaten in arm wrestling. I beat all the guys because my mum always told me that my grandma was good at arm wrestling. So my thing used to be arm wrestling. wrestling. Every opportunity, every party, everything. I would challenge
right.
people.
Awesome.
I was also unbeaten.
There you go.
It was only year 12. No, some guy beat me in year 12 and he didn't understand why I was so devastated. I'm like, you're the first person to beat me. Yeah,
No, that's great. Yeah, for
yeah.
sure. Well, that's the thing is that people might have some success against their friends or, in the pub or whatever, against people who are also amateurs or don't understand what they're doing. But, there's so much with the techniques and movements and positioning and everything else that comes with it that, just destroys the other person's strength. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, we had a guy. Oh, he came in last week.
He might be watching it. He's a lovely guy,
Right,
and
yeah.
and I kind of thought a little bit like him when I walked in the ring. I just
Right.
didn't say it.
Yes. Yeah.
So maybe that was the mistake.
Right.
Yeah.
I think every now and then you get somebody with a bit of an ego that comes in and says, I haven't been beaten in years and I can beat everyone and let's have a go.
He actually said that.
Oh, yeah.
Mistake number one.
Yeah, that's right. It's only to be beaten by literally everybody in the class, including somebody who was like 62 kilos, also beat him as well.
That's
yeah,
funny.
it's great. I mean, it is. It's fantastic.
Because it's the lesson in humility. That's
Exactly.
why it's great.
That's
That's
right.
the moral of the story.
And whether he comes back or not.
I hope he
that's
does.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
'Cause
he's welcome back. He's
Yeah.
welcome back.
He should bow as he enters.
That's right.
That's the
Oh,
only thing.
that's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you've got the attitude and you say, well, I'm awesome at this thing I've never done, and it's just, recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
It's no matter what it is, like if, canoeing or if it's boxing or if it's whatever, if you go in there going, oh, I'm a 10-time Taekwondo champion, I can box everyone here. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, we'll step in the ring.
But you kind of went the other way though. Like
Right.
you stepped onto the arm wrestling table first time and arm wrestled maybe one of the 2 or 3 greatest arm wrestlers of all time. How did that go? How did
Oh,
you
it was
feel?
great. Yeah, absolutely.
Fancy coming
Tell me
back.
this story. I haven't heard this story before. Let's go.
So do you know who Devin Larratt is?
The name sounds familiar,
Oh,
but you're going to have
okay.
to tell
Devin
me.
Larratt for
All
a
right.
We're going to
yes,
get a
we're talking
photo.
about
I'd
that.
like
yeah.
some photo, please. Let me see an image.
So
Okay.
Devin Larratt is probably one of the most popular arm wrestlers in the world at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, tall guy. He's a Canadian.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, used to be in the special forces in the Canadian
that's
military.
Sick. I'd love to join the special forces. Let's have a look.
So that's an old photo of Devin. I'll bring it up for the audience as well.
He's
but
still got his long hair. I thought I saw
no.
highlights of him without long hair.
he
He
did
just
just
had a
change
match,
it for,
yeah.
for
there
a
you
match.
go.
So that's
Yeah.
what he's looking
Yep,
like
yep.
now. Yeah.
So
That's the guy.
yeah, so
Devin Larratt for the audience.
So I'd been watching arm wrestling on YouTube and stuff for a few years.
Were you in Adelaide at the time?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
go on, yeah.
And he was coming through Australia. He went to the Melbourne. They had the Arnold Expo. He went there, and then he was doing some seminars at each of the capital cities. And I saw it come up on the Facebook, and I was like, oh, I've got to go and see that. Like it's Devin Larratt. Like I'll never get this opportunity again. He's current world champion
So
at the
you
time.
were into arm wrestling.
I was
at this
watching
stage.
it,
You were
yeah.
watching it on YouTube.
Hadn't done it
the
before.
gateway drug to arm wrestling.
That's right.
It's
It
on
is,
YouTube.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's Jake Paul, and then it was. So he was running a seminar. It was absolutely ages away. It was like 3 hours drive. Somewhere I was like, but I thought I won't get the opportunity. Anyway, went out there. He was awesome. Explained a few things about technique, which went over my head. I'd never done it before. But then he spent the next 4 hours arm wrestling every single person there.
That's fucking awesome.
and beating everybody like it was, a kid versus their dad sort of thing. And so, yeah, my first time getting on the table was against Devin Larratt, world champion. And I think it went 2 minutes. But the thing for me, everyone else that went against him and everyone I've seen in videos gives up. They push for 20 seconds and then they can't move him and then they stop. And then the next person does the same thing. And I'm not going to stop.
Oh, you legend.
I'm
That's
not.
awesome. I love that you picked his flaw. You were like, how do I beat this guy?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
watching,
YouTube videos.
studying these
Yeah,
reels.
yeah,
Yeah.
And so I didn't. And it went, over 2 minutes. And he was nice because there was no pressure from what I was bright red, pushing as hard as I could. And he was casually chatting to somebody else. at the same time, and every now and then looking back at me going, oh, that's good. No, yeah. But then eventually he sort of moved it over, and I think he mercifully got the pin there because he could see, and he said, "Oh, he's not giving up," and I'm like, "I'm not going to give up, mate. I'm going to keep trying." And it was great. And then
that's amazing. So was that your first arm wrestle?
First time,
You're joking.
It was great.
Wow.
Yeah,
Your first arm wrestle was like the world champ. Was like number one in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder if Devon remembers.
I think it's on YouTube. It's one of my it's great. It was a lot of fun to do it. And then the guys that were running the club then, Tim Graham, the Viking, he said, "Well, come on to the club," and it was literally in his shed.
Nice.
It was in his driveway, the roller door was up.
Like
And
Fire
it was,
Club.
yeah, exactly. There was 2 tables there and 6 people or something.
Yeah.
But I went along and started doing it and enjoying it, and then gradually it started, improving into something else, and then we sort of got the community centre where we are now, and it really dipped for quite a long period. I think just before COVID started, I was turning up to training, and I remember turning up and there was only one other person there, it was still okay. It was, it's still a thing, and I was still enjoying it and loving it. And the fact that I was still a beginner, it didn't matter who, if this person knew anything more than I did, it was great because I could work on that thing and they could teach me something. And it wasn't until maybe the start of this year that Tim said, "Did I want to take over running the club?" He's been doing it for 6 or 7 years, had enough of the organising the events and that sort of thing. So I said, yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to do it. And I've been making a few videos and stuff like that. And then, since then, so, we were getting maybe 5, maybe 8 people that were coming on to training at the start of the year. And now we're getting over 30. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's such a cool sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and it's good fun. And we've been pushing it everywhere we can.
And what do you think it has gotten popular? I mean, that's pretty huge growth. And what do you think will continue to make it popular, or do you think it's about to explode?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh,
I think so too.
Oh yeah. It
Even
is
though
it is right at that point. It's right at that point where it's about to go through the stratosphere. You're seeing events like they had the event on the weekend. I'm not sure if you saw it. It was Devon Larratt. He went against Michael Todd. And Larry Wheels, who has a big YouTube following, and he's a massive bodybuilder and powerlifter, and he'd been getting into arm wrestling for the last couple of years. He put on an event, and he put this event on, and it could have been better in some sort of aspects, but it ran quite well. Had Devon Larratt and Michael Todd on board, and it's probably the biggest watched event in arm wrestling history. So, and it will continue to grow that way. You can see, I mean, it's a massive sport in Europe. They have some fantastic arm wrestlers over there. There's a little bit of a rivalry at the moment between 2 of the world organisations as to who's going to be the sort of breakout stars. And you've got with the European style is, like you were saying before, it's very the purist sort of thing. They're very much just about the arm wrestling, very strict on the rules. Whereas the American style or what Larry Wheels is doing is a lot more of the showmanship sort of thing. You're trying to build that story. You're trying to have these characters. You're trying to. That's the direction it has to go for it to get to this next level. So I think there's a guy who runs the European side of things, Igor, and he is
amazing name.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I don't want to try and pronounce his last name. I think it's Matyashenko or something like that.
Yeah, it's got a lot of letters.
Mazurenko.
There you go.
He's not understanding that marketing aspect of it. Or if he does, he doesn't want to apply into it at all. He has his thing. He runs like a top 8 tournament, with his top guys, and he has all these guys under contract so they can't compete anywhere else. But it's holding it back. It's holding the sport back. If he wants to really push it, he would be collaborating with Devin Larratt, with Larry Wheels, with these guys who are bringing this massive audience and attention to the sport. And if he doesn't, his league will be left in the dirt. It will be left behind.
It's a little aching for listeners that aren't really onto arm wrestling to the difference between the way Test cricket used to be before Kerry Packer got involved.
Absolutely.
And this is where and I think this is happening across combat sports right now. You know, where we're talking about influencers stepping into the ring or into the cage, and we're talking about influencers. So Larry Wheels, for those people that don't know who Larry Wheels is probably one of the biggest fitness influencers in the world. He'll give anything a go. So he's a little bit like Izzy. He's a bit of a polymath. It doesn't really matter what it is. He'll jump in and his channel is all about that. And he collaborates with a lot of the best athletes in the world. Wow, so he'll gather them at his gym in Dubai. He's an American kid. He's only relatively young too. Like he's 26 or 27, maybe that old. But because he's got 1 million followers, the best athletes in the world are happy to turn up.
Send him a DM. Yeah,
there you go. Challenge him to a fight, maybe. Challenge him to an arm wrestle. Hashtag Larry Wheels.
Yeah.
So Larry's attracting this talent, appearing on his channel, building an even bigger audience, and manages just this weekend to put on the biggest show ever in arm wrestling history. And he's not a league, he's not a federation, he's not one of these governing bodies. He's just a kid with attention who's been able to focus it on arm wrestling. And he's one of these guys. I think he's competed in an IFBB event. He's competed in strongman. He's competed in powerlifting and strict curl events, and performed at maybe not at a world class level, most certainly. Maybe not at the highest possible level, but in a really quick, in a really short period of time, has been able to get himself to a really high level by surrounding the best people, being surrounded by the best people. And this weekend, he's just gone and put on the biggest event in arm wrestling history. Wow! Just because he's got attention.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right. I mean, so he built that platform, built that audience, and then he reached out to Michael Todd, Devin Larratt, and said, "I want to put this event on." And they were happy to come and do it because there isn't that other side of it. Like the European League, if they wanted to have a similar thing, they would have to go through all the ranks of competing in this one, to qualify for that, to do this, to do that, to get the opportunity to go against this guy, to go against them, to build there, it's like that would take a year, 2 years to get to the same point. It's like, or you can go, well, I want to see you versus you. You guys want to do it? Let's put it together. Let's make it happen. And people weren't doing that. People were not doing that, and they're missing it. And I'm seeing it going.
Don't worry about
it. I just want to get it happening myself. Like I want to do these sorts of things. So to see Larry Wheels being able to put on, the biggest event that I've seen in arm wrestling history, pay-per-view, people paying money to see arm wrestling,
And the match had a backstory. It had a backstory with a backstory. So the match was originally meant to be between the number one guy in the United States and the number one guy in Russia. So
that's a cool story. That's Rocky.
That's Rocky. That's the storyline. And then the Russian guy, who's the bigger, stronger opponent, 170 kilos, just a gigantic Georgian Hulk, they call him. He wimped out. I mean, let's just say it. He wasn't allowed to compete. Igor wouldn't allow him to compete against the number one guy in America. Yep. People couldn't understand why, because they thought, this is one way that the Russians can prove their supremacy, and everybody anticipated that the Georgian Hulk would win, and the match didn't go ahead. So Devin Larratt stepped in and said, I'll arm wrestle the number one guy. Now, Devin Larratt had stepped away from competition for a period of time. He'd had some health issues, and I think at the time of accepting the match was about 240 pounds at 6'5". By the time the match rolled around, and I think there was a couple of months in the lead up, turns up at nearly 300 pounds, the biggest, strongest version of himself ever, and dominates the number one guy in the world. So
that's pretty cool.
It's the story's cool. It's not that you got two athletes and one beat the other. It's like there's this backstory with a backstory, and that's where Larry Wheels won, because he had the story to sell the pay-per-views.
right.
And this is where Jake Paul wins. This is where Paul Gallen wins. This is where Conor McGregor wins. And this may be why your fight with Ronda Rousey will be huge.
All right, guys.
And Larry Wheel.
Yeah.
Larry Wheel.
Down, let's
One
do
after
it.
the other, I'd say. Warm up and
Same
Ronda.
time.
Yeah, wait, that would be the undercard of my fight night. Izzy's fight night. Where I fight everyone in one night.
Oh, that's right.